know, one thing Hillary Clinton will have to address tonight, she's going to have to, these Wikileaks issues. Wikileaks releasing the 12th batch of emails belonging to the Clinton campaign manager, John Podesta, raising a whole lot of questions, fresh ones, about her honesty. Take a look at this example, for example. When a campaign aide asked Podesta why Clinton was being labeled as a, quote, moderate, when the campaign was trying to spin her as a progressive to combat Bernie Sanders, Podesta responded, quote, I pushed her on this on Sunday night. She claims she didn't remember saying it. Not sure I believe her. To what the campaign aide responded, it worries me more that she doesn't seem to know what planet we are all living on and in at the moment. You know, when your campaign manager isn't sure he can believe you, and you know, when another one is saying, I'm not sure what planet you're living in, you may have some issues. I'm joined right now by former Massachusetts Senator Scott Brown, Republican commentator, Mercedes Schlapp, and progressive radio show host Leslie Marshall. Good to see all of you guys.
Good to see you.
There's that issue, which, you know, you could say is just a little bit of banter going back between people that are working in the campaign saying, I don't know what planet she's on today. But here's something that I find more disturbing. And this is an effort that they were making, her campaign aides were making, to look at the bribery laws and whether those should be strengthened. And so they had a memo circulating, and it was all about government reform, getting rid of public corruption, and whether to implement some of the recommendations for getting rid of the corruption into the campaign. And what you saw was one campaign sending it to Jake Sullivan, and he said, you know, this is a favorite of mine, this corruption issue. But as you know, really, and he capitalizes, but really dicey territory for HRC, right? And the aide responds, she may be so tainted, she's really vulnerable. And so, in other words, they gave up this idea of going after the corruption issue, which is something that, by the way, Donald Trump has successfully been able to go after. And it sounds like because they think that, you know, maybe she's got some issues there herself, Mercedes?
Some issues, Trish. I think that it's more than some issues. I mean, when you start looking at the friends of Bill Clinton with the issue of Haiti, for example, or Qatar giving $1 million to Bill Clinton, and this whole connection, this whole complicated web between the Clinton Foundation, the State Department, Hillary Clinton's campaign, the fact that the State Department has been working with the Hillary Clinton campaign. Now we have this FBI quid pro quo situation, which let's see if there was this exchange of declassifying or declassifying an email on her behalf in exchange for something that the FBI wanted. These are serious, serious problems for the Clinton campaign, and it is one of the reasons why she can't simply separate herself from this corruption stance in her campaign.
Leslie, what is she going to say about all this tonight?
Well, I do think she has to address some of that because obviously dishonesty is the biggest problem that she has going for her. But I would be encouraged by the poll numbers if people find her that dishonest, and she has the poll numbers that she does on a national level in a swing state and with pretty much every group of voter right now, even undecideds now are coming over to her side. But I think these are things that not only Chris will bring up, certainly Trump will bring up, and she has to be prepared to answer it. And not just an answer, but an answer that's believable enough for the American people.
The answer so far has been, well, it's Russia. You know, the Russians are hacking into us. I mean, nobody really, I mean, from the campaign has been willing to even, you know, say whether these are actually true or not. But I think that's strategic on their part because they also haven't denied them. So that's important. I don't think you can just, you know, get up if Chris Wallace says, you know, what's going on here and say, oh, it's Russia.
No, they're in defense mode. They're just going to hang back and try to ride it out. And I think that's a mistake. That's what Martha Coakley did in my race, and it didn't work. And if you're looking in New Hampshire and a lot of these other states, the fact that you still have 11% or more independents still not decided. In New Hampshire, as you know, they don't come out until 3 or 4 or 5 days before the actual election. So I think there's still a lot of play and still a lot of opportunities. And by blaming the Russians and kind of and say, oh, it's the Russians, and try to kind of deflect what, in fact, is coming out, which is very, very damning and serious. Unfortunately, Fox is really the only entity that's covering it, as well as social media. I think kind of hurts the prior leaks that we've seen throughout history, where they were used immediately for Democrats and Republicans. It doesn't matter the fact that it's from the Russians, allegedly. It's the fact that it's out there, and it's out there, and it's very, very serious.
But the bigger issue is, too, that majority of Americans distrust the government. And when you start seeing this interplay between the Department of Justice, the State Department, Hillary Clinton's campaign, Obama, the Obama administration, you have to wonder if there's any independence in this whole process. You have to wonder, as several FBI sources have said and several DOJ officials have said, well, goodness gracious, she should have been prosecuted for these emails. It wasn't just extremely carelessness. It was gross negligence. And this is why the American people have this distrust. And I think that it is a huge problem for Hillary Clinton. With that being said, Donald Trump has his own problems.
Well, he's got his own problems, sure. Well, I want to ask about, because we didn't touch on the whole FBI quid pro quo issue, which I would also imagine would come up. She's got a lot of problems. You touched on it. His problems as well. He needs to make a play for those independent voters in New Hampshire and elsewhere. How does he do it right now with the polling data, Leslie, stacked against him?
You know, I really don't think at this point, and I know people get mad when I say this, I think the people that say they're undecided, I'm sorry, are lying.
Well, maybe they're voting for Trump. Is this the Brexit phenomenon? I mean, maybe those undecided people are just too reluctant to actually say, well, I'm voting for the guy that the media tells me is so bad.
No, because when you get closer to the actual vote with Brexit, I mean, it really showed pretty much close to what the outcome was. It was a few days before, like to a week before, where it was completely different. I'm not saying all the polls are accurate. We certainly saw that in the primaries. But right now, a couple of problems that Trump has, quite frankly, I was advising him. You had asked me before I put my conservative hat on. One is to be prepared, and he hasn't been. He's been out campaigning, he wasn't preparing. Two, he can't take the bait that she puts out, and he's going to. She pokes the bear, and he comes out with the claws, and that is hurting.
But I'm hoping, for his sake and for your sake, Senator Brown, because you're supporting him, that, you know, people have gotten through to him.
Sure.
And he's been told now over and over and over again, discipline, discipline, discipline. Stick to the issues. You heard Melania. She told him herself. He needs to stay focused.
Well, listen, I already voted yesterday, absentee, and so my vote's already out there. And I don't disagree with you. I and others have told him from the get-go. And if you think that he's going to try to blame anybody but himself, you're absolutely right. He needs to be prepared, and he can't take the bait. And we've told him that over and over and over. And listen, he's going to do what he's going to do, and he's going to live or die by his own actions.
He's doing a lot. I mean, you saw who he invited.
That's right.
As his guest. He is bringing the half-brother of President Obama from Kenya, who's basically saying Donald Trump would do a better job with this country than my own brother would. And you got to wonder, are there any other tricks up his sleeves, a la what we saw last time
And he's
around?
bringing in regular Americans. This is as opposed to Meg Whitman and Mark Cuban. And so I think it becomes a big challenge for Donald Trump. I think for him, he needs to go out there and say, I am a fighter. I am a fighter for the American people. Look, I'm flawed. I know I'm not perfect, but I know I can do. I am the change agent that you need here in America. And if he can effectively deliver that message, I think it could help him.
Well,
and Tricia, if you take away his bad things and her bad things and focus on the issues, he wins every time.
We got some breaking news I got to get to, but thank you so much
Thank
to
you.
all of you.